Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi class, I like to say thank you for watching this video, and for the first let me introduce your group 7. My name Annisa, Melia, Hananda, Rizky. Second, Devinta Nurmalasari. Third, Agung Ginanjar. Fourth, Aldin Alfarizi. 5, Agustiani Nurilahi. And now, we will tell you about the journal. For the first title journal, Public Investment, Public Debt, and Population Again, under the Golden Rule Public Finance. Second, Emerging Market Queries in Finance and Business Implication of Private Sector Behavior on Public Finance Sector. And journal 5 section. Abstract, Introduction, Theories, Method, and Result. Abstract. This paper develops an overlapping generation model with debt finance public investment. The model assessment that government is subject to the golden rule of public finance and that households are finitely live in the sense of Yeri Blackhart. It is shown that the growth maximizing take rate is not equivalent to the welfare maximizing one. In addition, both tax rates are lower than the output elasticity of public capital. This paper also delivers the threshold value of public debts to GDP ratio that maximizes the equilibrium growth rate and social welfare. The inverted U relation between the public debt to GDP ratio and the economic growth rate suggested by empirical studies. Furthermore, this paper showed that both tax rate and the public debt to GDP ratio positively depend on longevity. This result provides a possible explanation for the rising tendency of the public debt GDP ratio under population again in countries such as the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan.
Introduction of Journal of Macroeconomic. Debt finance public investment affects economic growth and intergenerational welfare through different long-term benefit and costs. With population aging, one question that arises is how the government determines the level of spending on fiscal policy and issuing public debt when longevity increases. The central focus of the analysis is to clarify the relationship between public investment, economic growth, and population aging under the specific fiscal rules. In particular, this paper investigates the growth and welfare effects of public investment under the golden rule of public finance and population aging using an endogenous growth model with both private and public capital. In other words, the golden rules stipulates the public debt must be less than public capital. In this sense, the golden rules include a debt rule that sets a limit for the ratio of public debt to GDP as well as for the ratio of fiscal deficit to GDP. Many studies have investigated the macroeconomic effect of fiscal policy under various fiscal rules, including the golden rules and its variation, in particular the impact on economic growth of fiscal deficit fiscal rules and the sustainability of public debt have been studied using the extant models of Bureau 19 and 90 and Agami et al. On the other hand, physical deterioration of the national budget tends to curtail investment expenditure in public capital and therefore will narrowly economic growth Indeed, some empirical studies have shown the public debt is negatively associated with economic growth. For instance, Westphal and Rotter 20 and 20 empirical show the public debt has a negative impact on economic growth rates when it reach around 90 until 100% of GDP. Drawing upon these empirical findings, some theoretical studies have investigated the relationship between economic growth and public debt using an endogenous growth model with public capital and specific physical rules. Melia and Philirus. 2009 Analysis and Economic where government adopt the golden rules of public finance. Their studies show the fiscal policy made under the golden rules of public finance negatively impact long-run economic growth. However, the possibility exists of improving intermoral welfare compared to balanced budget rules. On the other hand, the effect of debt-freezing public investment on intergenerational welfare have not been sufficiently studied in terms of their properties. This reflects the facts that previous studies assume that the representative household is infinitely life. However, public debt serves as a form of intergenerational transfer. Is the government issue public debt to invest in public capital, then the benefits occur not only to current individuals but also future ones.
The theories. First, Aponso et al. 2005 evaluate if and to what extent expenditure-based consolidation have been more successful than other consolidations in Central and Eastern European countries. Second, Perez 2005 evaluate the effectiveness of set fiscal variables. The main indicators used in an error correction model framework were the expenditure and revenues of the central government. Third, Baldacci et al. 2011 developed a fiscal stress index which provides an early warning tool to identify exposure with respect to fiscal sustainability risks and also help identify the underlying factors which drive change in fiscal stress risk. Fourth, Curry and Ribeiro 2008 studied the relationship between government spending volatility and the size of the economy based on a simple bivariate OLS model. This showed that smaller countries will usually post a more volatile government spending.
Method. This section explains the basic setting of our mathematical model. After Tagami et al. 1993, final goods are produced using private and public capital. The production function is determined as variety is the total output of final goods. K is private capital, G is general capital, and L is labor input. Public capital is labor provided for the private sector. Capital is formed by investment without adjustment fees. Parameter in equality 1 compare with 0. The first after tax is given. We are R, T, and stand for after tax. interest and wage rates, and T means tax rate on output. Regarding household arrangement, we follow Yari 1965 and Bellingcat 1985. Each family is likely to die at any time. We assume that the size of the new cohort is also the same as with then population size. We assume that the utility function is an instant logarithm pivot consumption function. Then the expected lifetime usefulness of a household born at time is where C describe pivot consumption at a particular time for household born at time is the possibility for life at time. Therefore, the expected lifetime utility function is rewritten as the budget house born at time.
The result of this journal develops a generation model that overlaps with the funded public investment. This model assumes that the government is subject to the golden rules of public finance and house arrest is clearly living in the sense of Yari Blanchard. It is shown that the tax rate that maximizes growth is not equivalent to that which maximizes welfare. In addition, both tax rates are lower than the general capital output elasticity. This paper also obtained a threshold value of public debt with a GDP ratio that maximizes the level of equilibrium growth and social welfare. Namely, the inverted relationship between public debt and the suggested GDP ratio and economic growth. By empirical research, in addition, this newspaper showed that the ratio of tax and public debt to GDP is very dependent on longevity. This research provides a reasonable explanation for the increasing trend of public debt to the ratio of GDP under the age of the population in countries such as Britain, Germany, and Japan. Tamai 2016 uses a stochastic growth model with private and public capital to show that the golden rule of public finance can achieve the first best balance. According to the numerical analysis, some countries that apply the golden rule are around their optimal balance when the golden rule is active. Empire's England embodies the first best balance. Germany embodied the optimal balance within a range of error that makes sense for the 1995-2010 period. And Japan is in an optimal balance environment before 2000. To capture this mechanism clearly, overlapping generation model must be used. In addition, current research includes the possibility of that, so that it can analyze how longevity affects economic conditions and government policy under the age of an aging population. In the MPEP literature, Pen and Wang 2012 provide evidence that an increase in the ratio of dependency and old age leads to an increase in the ratio of public debt to GDP in the euro area. Checharita, Westphal, and Rather 2012 also provide evidence of this effect. With a focus on the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan, figures 2 to 4 show a diagram of the ratio of the population aged 65 years to the world population and the ratio of public debt to GDP for each country. An upward slice is a linear estimate based on linear regression. These three numbers indicate that the two variables are positively related. This evidence, in addition to our investigation of empirical literature, shows that population aging is an important factor affecting this government debt policy. We used the OLG model from Yeri Blanchard to show the interaction between population aging and public debt policy. This journal examined the growth and welfare impact of public investment financed by debt under the golden rule of public finance using the Yeri Blanchard model. The golden rule in public finance include a number of fiscal rules that have been established in the real world, so that the golden rule can be analyzed in relation to existing rules. In addition, the overlapping generation model is suitable for analyzing the impact of public debt on intergeneration prosperity. Therefore, our research is able to provide a comprehensive analysis of the impact of public investment in debt financing. This analysis shows that borrow taxation rules do not apply and that growth and their use will benefit together with life expectancy. Population growth seriously influences fiscal and economic policy because it increases tax rate and the ratio of public debt to GDP in equilibrium. In contrast to previous theoretical study, we have assumed that individuals have expected life limits and show that population aging is an important factor in public investment in government financing because it changes the average age and raises tax rate in the political economy. Furthermore, our research showed that in theory, aging population increases the ratio of public debt to GDP, a finding that is consistent with the result of empirical study. Finally, we will highlight future research direction. This newspaper sampled labor supply, thereby eliminating the possibility of population growth and retirement of the workforce. This newspaper sampled labor supply, thereby eliminating the possibility of population growth and retirement of the workforce. New entries in the household are very important when considering population growth and population aging. Employment retirement is important when considering intergeneration transfer and utility distribution. This feature changes several key equations and allows us to investigate the different effects of labor shock. In addition, this newspaper assumes that total government tax is carried out with the golden rule of public finance in a strict sense. However, this assumption must be relaxed to allow for high tax rate and variation over time and thus apply the rule God in a broad sense. This direction allows numeric analysis of dynamic equilibrium. This extension will bear fruit to consider the policy of application as applied to more realistic situation.
Abstract. This paper investigates empirically the effect of private sector behavior on public finance for a sample of Central and Eastern European countries over the 2000 to 2011 period. Among the measures of private sector behavior, we use the current account balance adjusted with the balance. The financial account balance of payment, the final consumption expenditure of household, and the evolution of the real economy. We find strong empirical evidence for the hypothesis the imbalance built up in the private sector would eventually spill over to the public sector under the form of government deficit and increased public debt. In the context of European integration, we conclude that the stability and growth pact and the Maastricht convergence criteria were needed to account for this relationship when determining critical threshold values for the macroeconomic variable.
Introduction of Journal 2. Standing with the early 2000s to the end of 2007, macro financial conditions were very favorable in global perspective. Economic growth was robust and stable. Liquidity in capital and money markets was abundant. Profitability in financial sectors was high, and asset prices were constantly rising. All of these were also accompanied by an important increase in the debt levels in the private sector and public financial sector as well. Financial markets started melting in the summer of 2007 as a result of the intensification of deterioration in the US housing market. In the case of Europe, we were the witness of a double spillover effect. In the first step, spillover came from the US financial system to the European financial system, and in the second step, after roughly 2 years, the prolonged stress in the European financial system resulted in the deterioration of public financial. The current sovereign turmoil in the Eurozone reflects how fragile can an economy become in front of the forecast of the market. Many economists and politicians have identified the public finance have become unsustainable, unhealthy, and undermine future growth potential.
The theories. The impacts on economic growth of fiscal deficit, fiscal rules, and the sustainability of public debt have been studied using the extended models of Barrow 1990 and Pugutami et al. 1993, this widespread interest has been motivated by productivity slowdown and fiscal deterioration of national budget experienced by major countries in recent years. The productivity effects of public investment financed by public debt and the significance of the fiscal institution have been widely recognized since the global financial crisis. Second, one classical view of the productivity slowdown is rooted in the productivity effects of public capital, as shown by Cheshire 1989. Many subsequent studies have also shown a positive productivity effects of public capital and that a decrease in public investment negatively affects economic growth. Third, Kronek 2011 also used a Ramsey-type growth model to analyze the influence of the golden rule of public finance on economic growth and welfare. He showed the government spending that benefits individuals' utility and realizes the marginal product of private capital would have positive effects on both long-run growth and welfare. He mentioned the positive growth effects are observed only when public consumption expenditures are lowered in the long run. Fourth, more recently, Teme 2016 used a stochastic growth model with private and public capital to show that the golden rule of public finance can actualize the first-base equilibrium. According to that numerical analysis, some countries that adopted the golden rule were in the neighborhood of the optimal equilibrium when the golden rule was active. The United Kingdom released the first-base equilibrium. Germany actualized the optimal equilibrium within a plausible error range for the period 1665-2010, and Japan was in the neighborhood of the optimal equilibrium period 2000. 5. In the empirical literature, Penn and Wang 2012 provided evidence that an increase in the old age dependency ratio caused an increase in the ratio of public debt to GDP in the euro area. Secreta, Westphal, and Rader 2012 also provided evidence of these effects, focusing on the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan. Page 2 4 show sketcher diagrams of the ratio of population age 65 years and over to the entire population and the ratio of public debt to GDP for each country. The upward sloping lines are linear approximation by a linear regression. These three figures show that the two variables are positively associated. This evidence, in addition to our investigation of the empirical literature, indicates that population aging is an important factor influencing the government's debt policy. We use a Yari-Blanchard type OLG model to show the interaction between population aging and public debt policy.
Method. The relationship between government balance and private sector behavior was studied with the help of the classic linear regression model. W with same B plus B to B plus B plus B, where W shows the balance of economic government studied in the T quarter as an endogenous variable. N is the number of quarters. K1 is the number of explanatory variable. B is the estimated coefficient for the E variable. Xe represents the value of explanatory variable E in quarter T, where U is the long term in quarter 1. The quotient explanatory variable are as follows: private sector balance, capital flow, household final consumption, expenditure, and real economic evolution. To achieve a stronger estimation process, the effect of various explanatory variables are these both in bivariate and multivariate regression model. Since the time series analysis has been carried out, great emphasis has been placed on ensuring that the variables studied are static. For testing static properties of variable, the augmented test form or ADF tests have been used.
Research implication of private behavior on public finance sector. Data and empirical research. A. Data. The data used for analysis refer to the period compressed between 2000QI 2011Q4, having assorted the Eurostat database. The empirical research was conducted 14 economies: Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Hungary, Romania, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia. Government balance, often referred to as fiscal balance, stands for the balance of the central budget of country. The private balance, percent GDP, was computed by subtraction the general government's balance from the current account balance. According to Eurostat definition, the final consumption expenditure of household (VCH) encompasses all domestic costs by resident and non-resident for individual needs. Considering the fact that there exist several factors that influence the European saving and spending habits, usually the individual components of VCH vary among the EU member states. However, we have analyzed the Eurostat data available for the final consumption expenditure of households as percentage change from one quarter for another for the 2000 to 2011 time period. Actually, the trend of VCH has decreased up to negative value in full development of the crisis years, because population has restrained consumption expenditure a lot. B. Econometric analysis. This is an important evidence for anti-cyclical behavior of government. The financial account of the balance of payment also has a positive coefficient determining government to raise its expenditure over its revenue. The Czech government balance is mainly influenced by the financial account, the real GDP, and the household consumption. All three variable coefficients indicate that the Czech government has indicated an anti-cyclical fiscal policy. It should be noted that an increase in the household consumption is counterbalanced by the government only after 3 to 4 quarters. Estonia is another country which conducted a typical anti-cyclical fiscal policy. Accumulation of debt in the private sector is counterbalanced by the government with a leg of our quarter. Similarly to Estonia, Latvia also conducted anti-cyclical fiscal policy with far less success, however. Hungary is a perfect example for the implementation of a pro-cyclical fiscal policy. All three significant variable private sector indebtedness, real GDP and household consumption have a negative impact on the government's balance. Romania apparently conducted an anti-cyclical fiscal policy as the public debt decreased steadily during the 2000s. However, it did not have the adequate magnitude compared to the speed of growth of private sector indebtedness. The massive capital inflow seemed to be a never-ending process which permitted the government to run a balance with deficit. Poland also followed an anti-cyclical fiscal policy. The government usually reduced its expenditure whenever private consumption started to grow. However, when the financial sector registered significant capital inflow, the Polish government accelerated its expenditure. The reason for this behavior could be the fact that most of the inflow was under the form of foreign direct investment. Slovakia and Slovenia, countries which are Eurozone members, implemented anti-cyclical fiscal policy. In the case of both countries, as a reaction of robust economic growth, the government reduced its expenditure with the aim of bringing the economy in a more sustainable state. And then conclusion of this journal. The recent sovereign debt crisis in Euro affect not only the Eurozone member states, but non-EMU countries as well. Many of the Central and Eastern European countries will have to undertake more fiscal consolidation in the near future to reverse the trend of rising debt ratio caused by the recent crisis and to comply with the European Union fiscal framework. Therefore, the question of how to design fiscal consolidation and how to preserve fiscal soundness is of great interest. In this paper, it is found that there was a divergent behavior among the studied countries, some of them reacting pro-cyclic and others anti-cyclic to the increase in the private sector consumption. The significant impact of the private sector behavior on the government balance indicates that the stability and growth pact and the Maastricht convergence criteria should need to account for this relationship when determining threshold values.